let me give you the latest on the coronavirus, and I'll start, as I often do, with statistics. The number of confirmed cases in China is over 74,000, the number of deaths over 2,100. But it's more complicated than that. First of all, those who die at home aren't counted. And then there's this from the BBC's Stephen McDonnell saying, would you believe that Hubei, which is right at the centre of the crisis, has gone back to the old way of counting? Well, what Stephen's talking about is that last week, Hubei changed how it diagnosed the virus, and that caused a huge jump in numbers. But now that change in diagnosis has been reversed. And as Stephen notes here, that's problematic because the most useful aspect of the official numbers has been watching the trend. Quite so, because this now means the overall totals and the way we plot the spread of the virus are both flawed at the moment. Apart from that, the monitoring is going really well. Let's see if the World Health Organization can help us.
The data from China continue to show a decline in new confirmed cases. Once again, we are encouraged by this trend, but this is no time for complacency.
Well, let's also focus on South Korea. It's confirmed its first death from this virus, and there's been a sharp rise in the number of cases. That's connected to the city of Daegu, a city of 2.5 million, and this building is the focus. It's been disinfected, and that's because a large number of cases have been traced to the religious group called the Shincheonji Church of Jesus, which uses this building. Some call it a church, some call it a cult. Either way, a woman who reportedly twice refused to be tested is reportedly now the centre of this cluster. She'd refused because she said she hadn't been to China recently. But we know there have been numerous cases of human-to-human transmission outside China, and it seems she's now at the centre of one of those. Here's Hyung-eun Kim from BBC Korean in Seoul.
This is a very alarming day for South Korea. We got more than 50 new cases today, and this pushes up the total number of infections in the country to 104. So basically, we got half of the total 104 cases in just one day. And like it's been reported, this has to do with a woman of a religious sect. The religious group is called Shincheonji, and we learned a couple days ago that she attended religious services where more than 1,000 people were there with her. We know that the government has tracked down 1,000 believers of Shincheonji, and the 1,000 people are being kept in what's called self-quarantine. They're staying at home and they're reporting their symptoms to the authorities. But what is alarming is that this number of people are concentrated in one specific area. It's called Daegu. Daegu is Korea's fourth largest city, and people are concerned if this city is medically equipped enough to handle the soaring number of infections.
Well, let's move from South Korea to Japan. We've got to bring you the latest on the Diamond Princess. You know all about it. Here it is. It's a cruise ship that's been quarantined in Yokohama for over 3 weeks. Over half of the cases of this virus outside of China are on board this ship. 634 of them. Among them were 2 elderly Japanese people who now died. All of which means Japan has been widely criticised for how it handled this. But Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is pushing back at that. He says we will put all efforts into preventing serious cases among those infected. The government has important responsibility of protecting the health and lives of its citizens. We will fulfill that responsibility. And of course, this is all being widely discussed on social media. I saw this really interesting comment from one user on Yahoo Japan who really cut to it, saying keeping them in the ship equals inhumane, letting them off from the ship equals irresponsible, and that is the balance the Japanese authorities are having to strike. The BBC's Laura Bicker is right by the ship.
Hundreds of passengers left on this ship, including 70 Brits who've all tested negative for coronavirus. This is the last night that they have to spend in their cabins. But the raw deal isn't over. Once they get home, they face another 14 days of quarantine.
Back to China, because people's movements there are being severely restricted in an attempt to slow the spread of the virus. As you'd expect, the lockdown is strictest in Hubei province, which is where the outbreak started. But actually, this is impacting businesses across the country. Stephen McDonnell.
Beijing's underground train network is eerily quiet. On a normal day, there are 10 million trips on this system. During the coronavirus emergency, 600 million. The new was extended. Many companies are either closed or staff working. Contact is seen as dangerous.
Anyone who's been to Beijing and has had a look around the warm-out areas of the city would not recognise this intersection.
We walk up the big corner where dinner. Worry.
People whose hometowns are outside Beijing haven't come back yet, but the locals have started to.
This is what's keeping China going at the moment, these delivery guys. Because even though the coronavirus fears are everywhere, they're keeping everyone fed, they're still delivering stuff to their houses.
Right now, only residents are allowed into housing estates.
So you've got to show your ID here. Sinking to me on
Ask how this guy is feeling.
Actually, I'm nervous. The illness is really serious.
You can imagine a close confines of a bus is the type of place people would be worried in terms of coming into contact with somebody who has the coronavirus. Hands on surfaces and the like. Everybody coming in has their temperature checked. And most people we talk to, they don't seem to mind this. They know that it's part of trying to control this emergency, and they're cutting the government quite a bit of slack.
Here for months. Stephen McDonald, BBC News, Beijing.
Well, restricting movement's one of a range of measures taken by China, but China has come in for criticism for how it's handled the crisis, especially how it handled it in the first few weeks at the end of last year. Let's hear from the World Health Organization on this.
A WHO-led international team of experts is now on the ground in China, working with their Chinese counterparts to find answers to some of the things we don't know, including the transmissibility of the virus and the impact of the measures that China has taken.
Now, do you remember this story from the Wall Street Journal? Headline, China is the real sick man of Asia. How China had labelled it racist and effectively expelled 3 journalists from the journal, despite the fact they didn't write the article. Well, the AFP journalist Laurent Thomé has sought out an update on this. He says, I asked China's foreign minister to explain why these journalists have been expelled and what laws justify the action. And he then shared the reply that the foreign ministry had sent. And in it, the Chinese authorities say those media who blatantly insult China, pitch racial discrimination and maliciously smear China must pay their price. We're not interested in the work of the division of work within the Wall Street Journal. It must be responsible for what it said and done. So no backward step. And there's something else we should factor in here. Here's Stephen McDonald again pointing out that this run-in with the Wall Street Journal comes the day after America has reclassified 5 Chinese party media outlets, and Stephen is making the point quite rightly that there may well be a connection between these things because the Chinese are certain to be upset by the fact these further restrictions are being placed on their media outlets by America. Well, our last focus on this story moves an awful long way from Wuhan and Hubei to a tiny village in the center of Ukraine. Have a look at these pictures from earlier. Hundreds of protesters blocking roads to a military medical center. They're trying to stop a big group of coronavirus evacuees who have come from Wuhan and are now going to be quarantined in this village or close to it in central Ukraine. Hundreds of riot police had to be deployed to ensure these people could get through. You can see some of them coming off the plane. 45 of them are from Ukraine, 27 are foreign nationals, and Ukraine is saying they've all been screened twice, all have tested negative. President Zelensky is urging people to show some humanity. Well, Jonah Fisher was right in the thick of things as this story played out earlier.
So this is the standoff. There are several hundred villagers on this side blocking the road and several hundred riot police on this side. And what the villagers have been saying is they are not happy that these 5 busloads of people who've been evacuated from China, they flew overnight from Wuhan last night, they're not happy that they're being brought here to a government facility to serve their quarantine. They don't believe the government's reassurances that these people have been tested twice and that they don't have anyone who's tested positive for the coronavirus on board. They simply don't accept that, and they don't see, and they've been saying that they don't see why these people couldn't have been brought elsewhere. So at the moment we have a standoff. I think when those buses eventually do make it here, the police will force a way through for them. But clearly a lot of scepticism here, a lot of concern from the local people. They do not want these evacuees brought here.
And Jonah was there when the buses arrived.
You can see on board, these are some of the poor people who have spent the last 24 hours being brought out of China here to Ukraine. And as you can see here, they've got a very strong security presence alongside them. Hundreds of riot police have had to be deployed to this village in central Ukraine because there's been such an angry response from the villagers here. They blockaded the road for most of the day. They simply haven't accepted what the Ukrainian authorities have been saying, namely that all the people on that plane from China had been tested several times for the coronavirus and that none of them had been found to be affected. People here simply don't trust what they've been told by the government. They've been keep on saying, why does it have to be here? And many of them are very worried that this will lead to infection spreading here. These people who are on these buses are a mix of Ukrainians and other nationalities. They will spend the next 14 days in this government medical facility while they serve their quarantine.
And there's much more information on the coronavirus via the BBC News website. bbc.com/news is the address.
Flawless, that's what I call it.